Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Of course, it's still Thursday morning. We're beaming live from Uyai. Well, we are now liking to tell you it's Ibiako around somewhere in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, it's Rise and Shine, and we're having the conversation of things happening in Nigeria. Let's go to the conversation of the national anthem. I have joining me here Joseph Suberu, who is actually a musicologist and works with a very reputable firm in Nigeria, as it were. And like I said earlier in the introduction, he's someone who has the nation at heart. We're going to look at the national anthem, the issues surrounding it. Just recently in the Tinubu-led administration, we saw the revocation of the national anthem back to the first one that was first put together in 1959 by certain foreigners. Now we're going to delve right into the history of all of that in a moment, but let's get to meet Joseph Suberu. Good morning and thanks for joining us in the show.
Good morning, Uyai. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, viewers.
Well, it's a great journey that we're about to look into here. Now, this conversation about the national anthem has irked different people from different angles. We saw President Tinubu about 2 months ago actually put down a new bill, which, funny enough, passed the reading really quickly and became law, the fastest that we have seen in recent history, and changed, the national anthem from the Arise, O Compatriot, which was established in 1978, reverting it back to Nigeria. We held the anthem, which was brought together in 1959. It's important to know that the lyrics was written by Lillian Jean Williams, and the music was actually composed by Francis Bender, all the way in 1959. But when it came close, it was used upon the first independence in 1960, and we looked to replace it in 1979. And I think that's a lot of things involved in this. But let me you were born at that time, so you even know like the history back then. Comparing the old national anthem, as we can now refer to it, and what is now in place, what were your first reactions when you heard that the federal government had revoked what anthem should be sung in the country?
Okay, for me, my first reaction was outrage, because I felt that the national anthem, it's supposed to be a national song, meaning that everybody from every part of this country should identify with the anthem, and it should be a song that brings the people together. It should be a song that everybody enjoys singing. And nations across the world don't change these songs like that. So the reason why I felt outraged was the speed at which the bill was passed. First hearing, second hearing, the next thing we knew, third hearing, whatever they did was so quick. I think they were under pressure to do it before they had the Democracy Day. And then the due process, in my opinion, wasn't followed. And I think a lot of Nigerians felt the same way. There was outrage. Perhaps that's the reason why a lot of people have refused to learn the old anthem that has now become the new anthem. Yes.
Now, by due process, what would you mean due process? What do you think that the federal government would have done differently with regards to the anthem?
Okay, the proper process is because this we are talking about a song that everybody in the country, from north to south, east, west, middle belt, wherever, should identify with. So this kind of songs are national in outlook, and it must be accepted by everybody. And for you to get everybody to accept something, you have to go through a process. You don't rush it like the way they did. In 1959, when the first anthem was approved, there was a committee that was set up, a committee of 6 professionals. 3 of them are very well known to me as very, very reputable musicologists of those days. One is Fela Showande. He was perhaps the most international musicologist, the very first Nigerian to take our local music, classical music, to nations outside Nigeria. In fact, he died not too long ago as a lecturer of music in the United States. Fela Showande was in the committee. And then the very first Nigerian to study music outside this country, as far back as 1911, the man known as T.K.E. Phillips, was in the committee. And then there is another person who is one of the very first Nigerians to also study music, who was the first lecturer of music in the University of Nigeria in 1960, was also in that committee. So there was a team of people who are in the committee that set up the discussions, and they made an opening for entries to be sent in. So they started first with poets sending in their entries into for the competition, and over 1,000 people sent in entries, and they took time out and went through them. There was guidelines that led to that. They went through those entries and then picked that of the first lady, the Lillian, I think that's the name, the one whose name was approved, whose work was approved. It was approved by the board, and then they now started the process of the music, because in music, in a song, you have to have the lyrics and then you have to have the music. So what happened was that they had the lyrics first, and then they asked people to compose music or melodies for these texts. So at the end of the day, it was Frances Bender whose music appeared to fit the wordings so well. And at the end of the day, it was approved. Even though these two people, the person who wrote the lyrics and the person who wrote the music, were both females and both expatriates who used to stay in Nigeria. They were non-Nigerians, but because, of course, the planning committee had already said that anybody could write, especially if you feel connected to Nigeria. They were Nigerians who wrote entries for the competition, and I think they won prizes for that endeavor. So it was a painstaking process that led to that anthem. So by the time the anthem was brought out, it was accepted. It was accepted.
So the anthem you're referring to now is the Arise, O Compatriot.
No. It's Nigeria We Hail Thee.
Nigeria We Hail Thee. That's the one that was written by Lillian and Francis.
Francis, yes.
Francis. Okay.
Yes.
So, but now I have a clip of an old newspaper, referring us to the competition for the national anthem. When you have newspapers dating way back to the day, Federal Nigeria, to the left corner of that particular piece, we see their competition for national anthem. The National Planning Committee for Independence launched a competition to select a national anthem to commemorate independence for the Federation of Nigeria on October 1, 1960. Now, a prize of $280 will be paid for a national anthem expressing the spirit of a Nigeria that is free and independent among the countries of the world. Now, entries of not more than 3 verses of 6 lines each in English are invited from Nigerians and non-Nigerians inside and outside Nigeria. Who can put this spirit into words? The setting of the verses to music will be the subject of another announcement. Closing date for entries, March 31st, 1959. Entries are to be sent to Independence Celebrations Officers, CO, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Lagos. Now that's the paper slide from where this particular anthem that has been reverted to was put together. Now we have the history of that. Bring us to the history in the 1970s, where we now saw, Arise, O Compatriot.
Yes. Okay, so what happened was that, of course, the Nigeria We Hail Thee was held sway for 18 years, I think, till around that when Obasanjo was president. I think people began to, as much as possible, detach themselves from colonial influences. I think the major reason why Nigeria We Hail Thee was taken off was based on the issue that a lot of Nigerians began to feel that as much as possible we should detach ourselves from the British influence that Nigeria has had over the years, and they decided to say, why do we have to continue to do things the way the white people, even though the committee that actually approved Nigeria We Hail Thee was a Nigerian committee, but the music and the words was from white people. We could understand. I could understand why that was.
Because that was going to be my question. Why would the committee have opened up the writing for the national anthem of a newly independent state to foreigners? Why would they accept that? I mean, the clause there read that even non-indigenous who resided outside Nigeria could write.
Well, it does happen, because we have examples of that in other nations. For instance, the national anthem of Germany, that they still sing it today, is written by an Austrian. So sometimes people live in places for a long time that they become naturalized, or they are seen as members of that society. And these people, Frances and Lillian, were expatriates who were in Nigeria at that time. And it was normal. In fact, there were other countries whose anthems were written by people who are not indigenous of the country. So it's not a strange occurrence. Like I said, that of Germany that they still sing till today was written by somebody who is from Austria.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do in a moment, okay, I think I should even ask it as a question. So upon the implementation, we have seen, no, I think there was a question you were trying to answer that I did not allow you
okay,
to
yes, that of how we moved to
Arise Competrate.
Yes. That was Obasanjo deciding to say, okay, let's have a Nigerian write an anthem. Let's have Nigeria send in entries. And again, that process that was initiated in 1959 was again reinitiated. A board was set up. People were asked to send in entries. Several Nigerians turned in their entries in text. And then the committee that was set up, again, put together those texts. Especially in this case, they had texts of about 5 different Nigerians whose texts were found to capture the dreams and hopes and aspiration of a united nation. And then the words of 5 different poets were put together. And those words now became the 2 stanzas of Arise, O Compatriot. And then a team of musicians led by the late Ben Odiasi, who happened to be the leader of Nigerian Police Band, a well-trained musicologist in the 70s. He was said to have written the music that seemed to carry those words perfectly. So by the time it was brought forward, Obasanjo accepted it, everybody fell in love with it, and it stayed with Nigerians. And it was accepted, basically, not because anything was seriously wrong with Nigeria We Hailed Thee, but because this is a product of Nigeria. So there's a sense of nationalism. I don't know if I could use that word. There's a sense of national pride that, okay, our anthem is written by our own people. For me, why I like Arise, O Compatriot is because for me it's deeper in words, and it's a bit longer in duration. I don't think a country as big as Nigeria should have an anthem of 6 lines, like Nigeria We Hailed Thee. For you to get
all of the new anthem is boxed within 6 lines.
Yes, for Nigeria We Hailed Thee, it has 3 stanzas. But most people don't want to sing the 3 stanzas at an event. They just want to go through the first stanza alone. But for you to get the depth of that one, you have to run through the 3 stanzas. And the 3 stanzas repeating the same melody 3 times, and it's just 6 lines. It doesn't musically sound very good for me. It
doesn't musically sound very good for you as a musicologist.
Yes.
Now, that's a big question, comparing the lyrical content of the old and the new anthem. Okay, I would use the phrases, the Nigerian anthem and the... Okay, I'll just be nice to both. You know, so, but the lyrical content, like you said, the one initiated by the Obasanjo administration had the touch of Nigerians.
Yes.
Having journeyed through independence for a while, they could now see themselves in a particular light, and could now write, you know, their own song. That's very important. We also have the music note for musicologists also viewing us from all around, you know, the continent this morning, and those watching us via our website internationally. That's the music note for Nigeria We Hailed Thee. That's right there. Three stanzas. But we usually sing just one. Now, that brings me to the next question. An average of how many Nigerians actually know this anthem? Yesterday, a bill came to the fore across all media space where the National Assembly was looking to punish up to 10 years in jail or 5 million naira for someone who doesn't recite the national anthem.
This is the problem. They are trying to force people to accept this old anthem. And Nigerians are trying as much as possible to detach themselves from colonial influences. No matter how you look at it, it's a song written by the whites, and there are so many people in Nigeria. I personally don't have a problem with Nigeria We Hail Thee. I think I enjoy it more when the 3 stanzas are performed. The only problem with it is, for me, is having to repeat the same melody 3 times. It doesn't musically sound interesting.
As an educationist, are your children, your students back in school, are they singing the 3 stanzas? What did you teach them?
My own experience was quite interesting. I found out that it was the junior students, like JSS 1 to JSS 3, who seemed to enjoy the fact that, oh, we have a new anthem. But the older students, SS 1 to SS 3, many of them refused to learn it. Wow. They were angry because they said I couldn't explain to them. They were asking me, why do we have to change the anthem? I remember that sometimes in the past I had told them during our music classes that anthems are not changed just like that, because they are heritages, they are instruments of a history of a people, so they are meant to last for generations. They are not things that people just on a whim decide to say, let's change it. So the senior students didn't want it, particularly those in SS3. They refused to sing it. And like we have Aisha Yesufu and Obi Ezekwesili, these are people who have come out publicly to say that they have nothing to do with this new anthem. So Nigerians, you could see the Super Eagles couldn't sing it, the Super Falcons couldn't sing it. Even when it was played at the Olympic, they were just looking. In fact, there was a mistake that happened in Ivory Coast when the Super Eagles went to play a game. Yes, they mistakenly played Arise Compatriot, and the Super Eagles preferred to sing that one. They sang it. Even though,
sang it through?
Yes. You could clearly see.
At events where these mistakes have happened recently, you
could see that people want to continue singing Arise Compatriot. And remember, there is a phrase in Arise Compatriot that Nigerians love so much: the labor of our heroes past shall not be in vain. That resonated with a lot of people. It's inspirational, and it reminds us of the people who brought us to where we are. The labors of people like Abat Macaulay, people who like Funmilayo Ransom Kuti, who labored for freedom, of our nation, of our women, for rights of this nation. So people like that, their memories should not just be pushed away. So that line reminds Nigerians about their past and the people who helped them to be where they are, that their labors should not be in vain. How do you delete that from our memory, and you are returning us back to something that very elderly people still remember, and I think many of them, even in the National Assembly, can't sing the Nigeria We Hail Thee. So what they are doing now is to try and force Nigerians to learn it by force. And music, yes, using the law and then the bill and then the punishment to say you must pay 5 million and all of that. It's not necessary. You don't need to force Nigerians to sing a song. Music comes from the heart. And when people sing from their heart, it makes more meaning. I was in the Gospel Akpabio Stadium, International Stadium, and I saw when Nigeria played Cameroon, the national anthem was played. The way the entire stadium sounded, Arise, O Compatriot, tears came down my eyes because I could see that Nigerians love their country. The reason why I'm wearing green and white is because of this issue. Nigerians love their country. The reason why the NSAS demonstrations and the last End Bad Governance, the protests didn't escalate to a level of chaos in Nigeria is because people love this country. They want this country to work. You don't need to force anyone to sing the national anthem. It should be something they enjoy singing.
Really serious conversation that we're having here, and personally, even just listening to Joseph Suberu this morning, the emotions are welding, especially when you go to the lines, of the Arise Compatriot anthem that has now, been stored away. But we're going to take a clip of the now accepted national anthem of the Federal Republic as it was incited somewhere around 1959, 1960. We'll take a clip of that, and after that we'll return, and our phone lines will be made available on your screen so that you can call in and make your contributions on the conversation we're having this morning. Nigeria be healthy. I'd like for you to just recite the first 6 lines of this current national anthem. Truth be told, a lot of Nigerians don't know it.
Okay, singing out the words.
Well, you can sing it, you can say that.
Okay, it goes like, Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland.
That's the word. Do you think that there's a time that Nigerians will eventually embrace this?
I have written a paper that I would be presenting in a conference in Port Harcourt, the Conference of Nigerian Association of Nigerian Musicologists, Port Harcourt next week, I should say. In that paper I had written, I think a lot of my fellow musicologists are looking forward to that paper. I had written that the Association of Nigerian Musicologists should make their position known on the matter by submitting to the National Assembly the way forward. In my own opinion, I hope that the musicologists get to accept it. By the time those of my professors there look at the paper, they could make a presentation as a body, because they were excluded in this whole speedy process. They were excluded. So I am of the opinion that the national anthem should unite the people, not pull the people apart. In this case, the Gen Zs are not interested in this old song they have brought. So, in my own opinion, I had written in the paper that the way forward is to try to merge the two anthems. I have found out that it is very easy to merge Nigeria We Hail Thee with Arise O Compatriot. They are both on the same time signature, they are both anachronistic, they are both homophonic, and the only difference is in the key. The Nigeria We Hail Thee is on the key of G major, and Arise O Compatriot is on F major. Which is very easy. It's either you push both of them to F sharp, or you bring Nigeria We Hail Thee to F major, which settles it. You can start with Nigeria We Hail Thee and then switch to Arise O Compatriot. For me, that it will even deepen the meaning, the message. So my suggestion or my position, which I intend to push really hard, is that the federal government should reconsider, instead of trying to force people and threaten them with lawsuits or fine of 5 million. That's not going to help. You are just going to provoke Nigerians. Nigerians are already angry, they are hungry, they are angry with inflation, with insecurity. There are too many reasons why Nigerians are unhappy at this point in time. So the best way for me to try and get the people together is perhaps for the government to smartly, we are not asking them to discard Nigeria We Hail Thee. It's a part of our history. So the easiest thing to do will be to match the two anthems, and it's not going to be too long. Nigeria We Hail Thee has 6 verses. Arise O Compatriot has 3 verses of 6 lines. So there's a way I have designed a prototype of it. It's just that I couldn't get it, the material ready. You would have listened to it. It's a beautiful measure of the old, the Nigeria We Hail Thee and Arise O Compatriot. You sing the two together, and something like this has happened in South Africa, because South Africans used to have an anthem that was written by the whites. So when Mandela them came in, the blacks were trying to say, no, we can't sing this apartheid anthem. So they had to now use the anthems of they look for a way to merge the anthems of the black, which is Nkosi Sikelel Africa, which is the song that the blacks identify with. They merged it with the anthem of the whites. And now the entire country of South Africa is united by that song, and everybody sings every part of it.
So that's something you believe can be done in Nigeria?
Perfectly, very easy. Musically, it is achievable, and I think Nigerians will love it. The youths will feel a sense of belonging, and they will be able to now be inspired to learn the Nigeria we hailed instead of threatening people with lawsuits and yes.
Because we see that in bringing on Nigeria we healthy, there are persons in the country who actually prefer Nigeria we healthy. I think it was, a certain journalist who I was listening to yesterday who said as far back as 2010, she had written that Nigeria we healthy should be reenacted as the anthem of the country. But she rather frowned on you trying to use the law against the people to sing the anthem nonetheless. But, I believe that this morning, having our phone lines on the screen, Nigerians are free to call in and give your take on the issue of the national anthem. You can also give your take. It's also important for us to put out there that that subversive bill that was that had passed first reading in the National Assembly has actually been withdrawn. Now, within the first few hours of that information coming out into the media space, both terrestrially and even on social media, Nigerians reacted immensely, and within hours also we've seen the National Assembly actually recall that particular bill. But it's also worthy of note that in looking into the detail of that particular bill, it had other bills that were not necessarily just about the anthem, just to be able to curb insecurity and other, fraudulent activities against the sovereignty of the nation. But two things stand out in that particular bill: seeking to jail up to 10 years someone who cannot recite the national anthem, which would actually include all of them in the National Assembly, I must say, and all the political leaders that we have in the country. Would they have been ready to implement the law, starting with themselves? And then we also see that there was a move in that particular bill to actually punish Nigerians for speaking up against their political leaders. That will bring a question to, are we headed again somewhere around the cycle of, fighting against the freedom of speech in Nigeria? A lot was in that bill. Would eventually still keep breaking it down, but these two issues stand out. Thankfully, it has been withdrawn, so we should not be hearing about it anytime soon. And this takes our minds to the fact that Nigerians are free to speak up against something that does not represent, who they are as Nigerians. Yes, we elected these people into governance, but you must check back with the people when you want to take policies that would change the framework of who we are as Nigerians. Of course, we're still talking this morning to Joseph Suberu, who is a musicologist looking into the intricacies of these anthems, both the old and the new. The reenacted and the preferred anthem of Nigeria. So he's establishing that if we merge both our anthems, it could become a common ground for everybody in the country at this time.
Yes.
Well, really serious things. We still have our phone lines displayed on the screen. We'll be bringing this conversation to a close shortly, but we'll really like to hear from Nigerians this morning. What's your take on the national anthem? Now, the federal government actually didn't seek the opinion of Nigerians on a very large scale, because there is the clause of the fact that they met with a few persons. But like you said, the entire association of musicologists in Nigeria were exempted from the process.
They were, and that's not really nice, because at the first instance when the Nigeria We Hail Thee was done, Nigerian musicologists were part of the process. We are not just talking of musicians. These are people who are not just musicians, but they have studied music. Okay, they were part of the process for Nigeria We Hail Thee, and they were part of the process for Arise, O Compatriots. So if there is a need to return back to this old one, the reasons has to be given, and the people has to be carried along. I personally think that if they had called the Nigerian Association of Musicologists to have a say or ask for opinions, probably this idea of merging the two would have come in, and then perhaps they would have considered it, and it wouldn't have been so difficult for Nigerians to accept this change. Is the fact that they seem to be shoving it or pushing down the throat of Nigerians is what most people didn't like, and they were doing it at a time when Nigerians were angry with the government.
Okay, so one last question that I'm going to ask you, because it has been on my mind before we wrap up the conversation this morning. Do you think that there is an administration that will come and revoke the reinstating of Nigeria We Hail Thee as the national anthem? Do you think it's something that
Arise, O compatriot.
Yes. Do you think an administration will come and take us back?
I honestly think so, because this has not gone through the due process, and as much as possible, Nigerians are trying to detach themselves away from colonial influences. No matter how you look at it, this Nigeria We Hail Thee was not written by Nigerians, and that will always be an issue. So this is, for me, the wish of the president. I'm not even sure everybody in the National Assembly accepts it if they are to speak from their hearts.
So when you are in the National Assembly, your responsibility is actually to look into policies and reforms and take the best decision by Nigerians.
Yes.
What will favor the people. So why will the National Assembly be acting as stooges for the president?
What we saw was, they had a hurriedly done process, where some of them that even had certain issues with the use of motherland and fatherland, they were not even allowed to finish they just wanted everybody to agree that there's a need to change the anthem. The process was not, they didn't allow people to make so much input, even in the National Assembly. So for many of us, we just felt this is just what the president wanted, and then he got the leaders of the National Assembly to sort of get their members to just endorse it.
Would you think that there is a political undertone for this particular anthem to be reenacted?
Not necessarily.
Even possibly an international influence to have this anthem reenacted in the kind of speed that we actually did see it being reenacted?
Not necessarily. I just feel that some of our elderly people, those above 50 who sang Nigeria We Hail Thee in those days, some of them are still stuck in those days. I remember my dad, when I was still a kid, my dad used to sing Nigeria We Hail Thee. Those days it didn't really make much sense to me, because we were enjoying our Arise, O compatriot. So the problem is, some of those elderly people wanted Nigeria We Hail Thee to come back. For me personally, I've looked at the wordings of the Nigeria We Hail Thee. I don't think I have any issues with it. What I have issues with is the fact that it's too short for my liking. A stanza should not be 6 lines of an anthem of a country of over 200 million people. I don't think it's fair to do such a short distance. So for me, Arise, O compatriot is deeper and has much more content to me than Nigeria We Hail Thee. So I would not be surprised if another government comes in tomorrow, after Tinubu is out of office, to say, look, this is not acceptable to the people. So let's review it, let's change it. But for me, the smartest thing for Tinubu to do, instead of trying to threaten people, is to try to achieve that merger of the two anthems. There are countries with much longer anthems that will take over 2 minutes. We listen to them at the Olympic. There are anthems that are over 2 minutes to say, but even in the merger that I did of the old and the new, it was not up to 1 minute 30 seconds.
Wow.
to do so. It's not too much of a time to sing an anthem for your country. So for the future, I think another government will still revisit this national anthem issue, because the process for this change was not painstakingly done.
Wow, thank you so much, Joseph Suberu. It's been quite a really strong conversation, even full of emotions, as it were. We were looking into the issue of the national anthem, as it has actually given birth to all kinds of emotions in the hearts of Nigerians. There are people for and or against, the initiating of the Nigeria We Hail Thee anthem, and we also have people who really don't care, as it were, in Nigeria. But Joseph Suberu is pushing that if the federal government would actually consider a merger of both the Nigeria We Hail Thee and Arise, O compatriot anthem, it will give us a place to meet in the middle, I beg your pardon, where everybody on all sides will be fine. Now, That's it on the national anthem issue here, as much as we can take. Remember that the National Assembly had actually sought to put in a bill that was going to punish anyone who was not going to be able to recite the national anthem to the tune of 5 million naira or 10 years in jail, just going away for 10 years because you do not sing the national anthem. What are these people thinking about? Well, thankfully, they have actually repealed that particular bill. It has been taken out of, consideration. Once again, Nigerians, let's say that your voices were heard. Thank you so much, Joseph Suberu, for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.